Hi guys, my name is Serg Hospodarets, and today we're gonna speak about CSS Houdini, which is actually a bridge between CSS, JavaScript, and browser rendering, and everything else. So, in general, about me, I love to participate in new technologies development, everything what comes to the browsers, share browser updates, and very excited about everything related to JavaScript and CSS. And I'm also a blogger, and I have my blog, and recently my article was published in Smashing magazine. It was about CSS Custom Properties, and CSS Custom Properties is essential part of understanding what is CSS Houdini. So later we will use this as a bridge from CSS to JavaScript, native bridge. And let's go to custom properties. So who knows what is CSS custom property? Super, we have somebody. So in general, CSS custom properties, it's kind of the same idea as in preprocessors to have, first of all, variables, and secondly, to actually give us developers ability to introduce our own properties and then tell the browser how to work with them. And let's take a look into preprocessors first and then move to CSS. Why actually we need CSS custom properties? So preprocessors, we have variables and operators. So who use preprocessors in general? CSS preprocessor. Sounds good. Cool. So you know that actually you can declare a variable, provide some value there, and after that you can use this across the application. So it's actually not something new for you. And of course you can do some operations like plus, minus, multiply, anything. We use and do this in our code bases. But preprocessor variables actually have own problems. Like each preprocessor provides new syntax. You know, in SAS it's dollar variable. In less it's something else like dot. Always you spend time learning a new language, new syntax. You always spend time doing some additional setup. So even if a config is kind of easy, good luck. Like if you did couple webpack configs, like you know what I'm saying. It's like always takes time. And every time you do any change, you always wait till it's recompiled and applied for the CSS output, then browser loads this. So strange, why we do this? Why browser cannot do the same? Yep. And this compilation takes your time. Every day you're spending time just waiting where actually this will be done. So, and essential part of other problems like absence of interaction with the browser. Preprocessor variables have no idea about this, about browser DOM structure or anything else. So it goes to CSS output. That's it. Everything what you can do. And yeah, interaction with the browser means like you cannot pass something to JavaScript directly. You always go through CSS and then JavaScript. So let's go and take a look what we actually have as CSS variables. And you will see that actually you can start using this today. So you're just using syntax like dash dash and then variable name and then just a declaration value. We will discuss what you can put as a value there later. And usage is quite simple. Just use var function like calc, like something else, but var function, and put the variable name. And immediately you can use this across your code base. And let's take a look into some example. Root. So root is typically it's HTML. I provided some main color, main background, and here is the trick. All the CSS custom properties have the same behavior as usual CSS properties. They cascade, they do the same thing. So if you provided something for HTML, immediately it's available everywhere. So it's a global variable. Also, you can scope this for specific things. We'll discuss this later. So after that, I'm just dash dash main color, some value, and after that, I'm using this var main color as I provided you here. And of course, you will ask, like, why, again, I should learn this dash dash new syntax, why not dollar, or not something I'm actually got used to. So the idea was, you currently use SAS, you can use less, you can do something stylus, I don't know, whatever other options. And the idea is just to provide ability to use both at the same time. Tomorrow we can start using CSS custom properties in your code base, in your preprocessor will not touch them. They will go directly to CSS, which is good. So you can take the power of both worlds. So here's a simple demo. I just took a demo and just extracted something like CSS custom properties, like font size. Let's take a look. You see it's plain CSS. I don't do any magic, so actually browser does. I'm changing, boom, everything working. The same I can do for text shadow. I can make it bigger, or it actually will break it a bit, but anyway. And of course, I can just put there some fonts. Let's break the demo, Arial. Oof. So it works immediately by the browser. And here is the good, actually, news. 1 year ago, in my previous talk, I was saying about custom properties. Everyone was saying, okay, Serge, it will be in 10 years or something. Voila. 1 year, all the major browsers just support this. Of course, you will say, ta-da, our friend is red. What to do? We have CSS Next, we have custom CSS mixins, so you will have ability to actually emulate this behavior if you still support this browser. Actually, good news, like giant companies like Salesforce dropping support of A11 soon, guys. Soon, guys, we will be there. Depends on your project and everything else. So, good news, everything green. We are in good shape. Valid examples. What actually you can put into CSS custom property? The answer is simple, everything. Everything what is valid CSS value you can put there. Let's take a look, like colors, yeah? Here, layouts, there, lengths, anything like type, here is time, here is string, you can put functions. Of course, the power of custom properties is that you can put other functions like calc, of course, other custom properties you will see later, and even though you can put some strange expression. Have no idea how will you use this in CSS, but later you can use this in JavaScript. Read this and reuse. So it might be a terrible idea, but it might be used by CSS and JS guys. Hopefully, they will not go very crazy. Anyway, put there anything. They cascade, they do the same as other CSS properties, and next thing is like, of course, as anywhere in other languages, I want to have some syntax sugar. What if? Sorry, I just need some magic water. What if I just want to say, there is some variable, I'm not sure, CSS custom property, I'm not sure if it's already available or will be loaded later, available later, just use some default value, as we usually do in other like if or something, yeah? Just pass the second param to the var function, and it will be used as default value if the custom property still not provided for this block or anything, or still not loaded or something like this. And of course, you can reuse other custom properties. Like if you provide a new custom property, you can reuse another one as a fallback. So here's a demo, but better take a look at this one. In general, like how we can do this. Here is a demo. You see, I'm just saying there is a global property custom, and you just text custom with just first letter in uppercase. And I have two boxes like text.custom, so two classes like text custom and text custom properties. There is only one difference. They have different classes. And I'm saying for the first block, just use as a text, which actually is the content of this block, just use this variable. I'm saying use undefined variable, of course it's undefined in my code, and as fallback use custom. Okay, fallback goes to custom and reuse this text. Custom properties is just different. You can not only just reuse other variables, you can also concatenate them. For example, I'm saying like variable custom concatenate with properties with some space here and make it work. Let's take a look that actually it works. Properties, second updated, and custom, I'm updating in real time, immediately. Your browser did all the magic. You don't need preprocessors anymore for this stuff. And if you know CSS well, actually there are many CSS white keywords. You can just use inherit, initial, unset. So the main idea, like if you want to use something from user agent, which is actually a browser, and you want to use the default value for some property, you usually use like initial, unset, or revert. And they also available for CSS custom properties. So as you see, everything you have for usual CSS properties available for CSS custom properties. Only one interesting thing, like all property, if you put something on that particular property, like initial, it resets mostly all CSS properties except custom properties. And currently, it's under consideration and discussion if we need actually specific reset for custom properties only. So hopefully, after a while, it will work. Recently, Chris Carrier just also described a good usage of custom properties. So you always have, sometimes you have some long values, like for transform or other things, like where you put one value, second value, and even padding, even margin, anything. And you put space, another part. And let's say for hover, for another state, or just different class, you want just to change only part of it, yeah? So what could you do? Usually you wait until the browser adds support for this separate properties. For transform, it's still not available in many browsers. Just use custom properties. Here, I just, you see, I extracted like scale and rotate in separate properties. Everything what I do here, I'm just changing on the hover only rotate part. Ta-dam, it immediately works. So just all the values can be changed individually. Just separate them. And it leads us even further. If I can separate, I can also provide a new values. Box shadow. Box shadow is wonderful, we use it, but the only one problem. When I use a long value, for hover, I want just to change the color. What I'm doing, copy paste, like 0, 0, 30 pixels, orange. I don't want to do this. Nobody likes copy paste. So I just introduced box shadow color, still not available in the browsers. And using this, you see here it's yellow, there is orange for hover, voila. Here, I'm just changing to red, waiting, reloaded, works. So you see, you can not only just separate all the value, you can also emulate non-existent custom or non-existent CSS properties. So here is the power and operations. As I said, of course, we use across all our code bases some operations like plus, minus, everything like this. And if I say something like this, my variable multiply by 1 and 5, your browser will say, I have no idea what you want from me. It's just not, it's valid CSS, but unvalid for the browser. The browser doesn't know what you want. Use CSS calc. CSS calc function is your friend from now. You put this into calc, and browser immediately will know. As only something is changed for this block font size variable, just immediately apply this everywhere where it's used, and especially in the calc function. So here, just use it out of the box. So calc provides even more power now. Not only just using provide some your operations, but also work with custom properties and provide some units there. Let's put all this together, everything what we knew from previous slides. So if I can separate values, if I can use custom properties everywhere, let's go and do this. So background color, we can use just RGBA function. As you know, user put just 4 different things like RG and B channels and then opacity. So opacity to not overcomplicate, I just put 1 and RGB. You see, here's the demo. On this demo, I have 3 sliders. These 3 sliders provide just values from 0 to 255. This is actually the range of possible values for this RG and B. And let's change it. So everything what changed here is the only value of CSS custom properties. Everything else is done by browser automatically. And I can go further. Let's use calc. Yeah? And we can invert actually color. Of course, it's not Instagram filters, but still a lot. We just taking R value and saying like, calculate R 255 minus this particular channel. And actually, it's inverted color for this particular RG and B. Let's take a look. So we're changing something, and immediately everything applied in the browser. Cool. So we can do this. And what if I go crazy? All the colors, somehow, you can invent some color formula and let's say just create all the colors in your application from one color. I don't know, usually it's white or some white color and black color, yeah? You have dark theme, you have white theme, or some light theme. And you can use this for theming, for anything you want. So the main idea, here you see, I just have only 3 colors like R, G, and B. And then I invented my formula. I'm just doing some crazy calculations like multiply, divide, blah, 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 make sure it's not out of the box. And you see this calc is actually something terrible. And I'm generating all the colors in this particular demo depending on my 3. Let's take a look that it actually works or no. I'm changing. R. Boom, immediately, the same. B. Change it. And I go a bit far, let's just apply this like this. You see? Everything changed. Of course, Bill Murray cannot be changed. We're just keeping him. That's it. We can go even further. What if I want just to apply some value of the changer? My JavaScript will just change everything in our application. So color, theming, everything you can do using custom properties. It's not possible to do using Sass without additional code. If you in Sass you want just to apply some new theme, color theme or anything, you overcomplicate your CSS output with the particular classes and overrides for colors and backgrounds or anything like this. Let's take a look. Changes to custom properties have immediate effect. As you saw, as only I'm changing something, it's actually browser immediately does this. So here is an example. You see, you have just on hover, I just want to change the indent. So what I do in Sass, I'm saying like, I have a variable, 30 indent, 30 pixels, no problem. Margin, 30 pixels, apply it. But then I'm changing this variable. In Sass, no effect. No effect because Sass just saying, okay, you changed this after you applied something explicitly. I don't care, just nothing goes to CSS output. The same for hover. If you change this variable, it's not explicitly applied. If you didn't do something like this after this line, if it's missed, nothing will go to CSS output. Let's take a look at the actually CSS Custom Properties demo. You see, I'm saying like indent 30 pixels. Then I'm doing this in margin. As only I change the value of indent property, it immediately will be changed. Doesn't matter where. As only you apply something for the DOM value, DOM element or anything, it cascades, blah, blah, apply it immediately. For hover, it's the same. It actually applied immediately. And I'm sorry, something was missed. Yeah. And CSS Custom Properties, as I said, another problem which cannot be solved anyhow with preprocessors, they are aware about your DOM structure. Let's take a look. Usual example, yeah? You have text and text active. Let's say you want to have bigger text. What do you do in Sass? Text size, apply font size, done. You want for active just to change one variable, yeah? What are you doing? Text size, 30 pixels. Because of things we discussed just now, nothing changed. Just your Sass will not provide anything to the output. And let's take a look into this demo. Text size 20 pixels, the same, apply this variable. As only we changing this, adding class active, boom, immediately you see everything what you need. It's very powerful thing. For example, I use this across the projects, and it really simplifies your code. Otherwise, you always just have to provide additional lines. Nobody likes writing more code. Yeah. As I promised you, of course, you have ability to work with JavaScript. So CSS, JavaScript, they always combined, yeah, in our applications. You use some breakpoints in your CSS, I'm pretty sure, and you want to use, let's say, in JavaScript the same. If you know there is a API just to use in JavaScript breakpoints the same. Like if it's passing breakpoint, apply my code. And I don't want to copy paste this or something. I want to pass from CSS to JavaScript. And there is a simple API. You just find in your element like breakpoints data, like here, and then you can just read your variables like font, tablet, anything you want. So your custom, your breakpoints can be simply just sent to JavaScript. So now it's your actually bridge from CSS to JavaScript. You will see it's only small part of this bridge. And after that, you can just do the same. Like from JavaScript, you send some request to the server, it answered, and you want to apply something on the UI. I don't know, something, yeah? Change some class, active, loaded, anything. Do the same, like style, set property, font, custom, to do. You can do the same, just from CSS to JavaScript, from JavaScript to CSS. Both ways. And let's actually use it, yeah? Everyone likes demo. So I created a demo. I have a CSS 3D cube. So it's quite easy to create. I'm just using CSS 3D functions. And I have only 3 custom properties for this demo. These three custom properties, I use it in transform function. So everything what I do, I'm rotating this cube depending on these custom properties. Let's take a look. Rotate X. I just wanted to rotate it a bit differently. Boom, you see, it changed. Let's just rotate Y. Why not? Boom. I can do it bigger, smaller. Everything what it does, it's transform function. You see it's bigger. Oh, let's make it even bigger. It's cool, it's wonderful, but I want user interaction with this, correct? What I do this from JavaScript. Immediately, everything applied in your browser. You just move your move your mouse. You just make it bigger, smaller, just with mouse wheel. Immediately. So can you imagine how many good effects can you apply with this? And because it's native CSS and JavaScript, it's just super performant and can be used across the browsers, as we already saw. And okay, we have our friend, yeah? Our friend tells us we need to have a way to actually check if it's supported in our browser. And in CSS, if you didn't know, there is a support API. You just use this add supports, and after this, you see just CSS variables. It's quite easy to see that actually we check in here if CSS variables are available or no. In JavaScript, it's the same API, not the same, but there is API css.supports. You put the same CSS variables, and then you can check if it's supported, do something one, otherwise do something else. And here it is. Let's say tomorrow you start using CSS Custom Properties, but you always had the previous code which actually was generated by SAS. What to do? Just generate another CSS output with CSS file, like without CSS Custom Properties, it's your previous one. Now you have another one which is called with CSS Custom Properties, and check if it's supported. Just remove previous one, load another one. So you can do things like graceful degradation. You can do progressive enhancement, whatever you want, because you have these APIs. Okay, we already know that all this was implemented in 1 year. Because of such fast implementation, of course, there were some constraints. Yeah, constraints is, let's take a look into the specifications. Animatable, no. Custom CSS properties by default are not typed, which means just browser, when you use some CSS custom property, it goes to the declaration, reads, it puts at the same place. It doesn't care what type it is or anything, just read, use. And in result, they are not animatable. Let's take a look about comments in this in this specification. CSS custom properties can even be transitioned or animated, but since the browser user agent has no idea what type it is, it just flips at 50%. What it means, like you're saying, I want to change my color from green to red, and in 1 second I want this wonderful animation. And actually what browser says, like, okay, I have no idea, some property should be changed from this to another one in 1 second, so at half a second it will be changed from property A to property B, which means like flips at 50% behavior. What can we do, and why it's important? Why animation is important? Actually, when you listen to music, you don't see these musical notes. You don't care. You just listen to music. When you see the light, you don't care. It's like particles or anything. You just see the light. Yeah. And let's take a look. It's something's wrong with this. Yeah. What if I do here? Oh, much better. Cool. So actually, animations are quite important. Everything is smooth in our life, mostly. So we need some types. Why we need types in our CSS code? Because currently you see it's IDE, it's your browser, it's DevTools in Chrome. So as only browser knows about your property, what type it is, what can be put there, you see, as only you start typing like grid or anything, browser immediately knows, okay, it can be used this way, it can have some particular values. If you put font size red, browser immediately says, I'm sorry, bullshit, it cannot be done because I have no idea, I have some constraints for the font size property. The same you see immediately applied in your DevTools. So, if we provide types for CSS custom properties, not just strings as it is now, immediately we have support and validation in IDE, syntax highlight, performance update, and of course in the browser, in DevTools, can you imagine like immediately you're saying, my custom property is the number. As only you put there red, just your DevTools saying, no, it's not true. The same you can apply linters, compilers, so a lot of abilities. And you will say, okay, actually, should we invent types in CSS? And if you're not sure, let's take a look. So CSS was invented in 1996. First level of cascading style sheets, and you see, actually, it's already there. Units, length units, percentage units, colors, URL. So actually, it was invented, oh my God, many years ago. So, in general, let's take a look. You know that for text align, you have only dedicated values like left, right, center, justify. Everything else actually is not a valid text align value. For padding top, you can use length, percentage, anything, some of these values. So you already know as a developer, if you're a CSS developer, you already know some types are available for this property, but not for other of them. Yeah. Border widths like length, 6, medium, and some applied values there. So we are not inventing types. We have them already in specifications. Now we will just use them and we'll know how they are called. And here we come to CSS Houdini group. So CSS Houdini task force, what it is. So one day let's say, just in general, that was the story. All the browser developers understand they want to actually move forward. Developers asking like to expose the API. Currently, we have a lot of API which is hidden. Yeah, you saying like display flags and magic. Some magic happens in your browser. You have no idea why, but it works. You cannot control on JavaScript. You always just use some mutation observer, anything to actually check if something is changed in your component. So the main idea of this group was just expose the API which previously was hidden by the browser. So it's done not only by the major browser developers, but also HP, LG, Adobe, IBM, and other companies are there. And you see, it's not just only group dedicated developers and where all the browsers are present. Actually, it's in general, if you see from another point of view, it's bunch of specifications. Bunch of specifications are available. Some of them are about CSS custom properties. You see, properties and values. We will see this typed object model, and something about JavaScript like worklets, CSS layout, paint, animation, worklet API, and something different, font matrix API. You would not believe, but it's quite hard, actually, if you're a CSS developer, you know this, that to answer like how big will be letter or the text in some particular situation. That's why we use this vertical rhythm magic or anything like this, and CSS parser API. So actually, it's a group which works on all this CSS specs and where all the browsers are involved, which means actually it's moving forward. That's why we already have this in some of them. Let's take a look into the first two specifications. They are related to CSS custom properties, which you already know how work and everything about them. So CSS. Today, to read CSS in JavaScript, you're doing very strange things, and I do this as well. Like when you read something like translate 3D, can you imagine if you have this CSS property and you want to take X, Y, Z? What do you do in JavaScript? Okay, looks like it should be just some colon here. It should be some translate 3D, possibly. It might be pixels, it might be percentage, and usually such a code just takes, I don't know, not dozens, even hundreds line. Yeah. So this API, this specification is actually to answer the question like how simply to read something from CSS, how simply to write something to CSS. Like, okay, I want to get the value of font size. Here it is, like value 12, type pixels, and the same from JavaScript to JavaScript. You can just do some transformations, and you can send something from JavaScript to CSS. Just generate this transform, translate 3D. You're saying like new CSS transform value, new translation, blah, blah, blah. And all this already available and can be polyfilled in stable Chrome behind experimental web platform features flag. So we can use this today, and it can be easily polyfilled. And here is the main trick for CSS custom properties. These 6 lines do all the magic. It's actually essential part. It's everything mostly what is done by this specification. Now you have ability in your JavaScript, again, it's available in Chrome stable under the flag, to say, I want to have custom property, which is named like this, and provide actually a type for this, if it's color, if it's length, or anything else. And it will give you all this additional things like linting, browser support, everything what we just discussed. And you can now you control if it's inherited or no. Previously you did not have any control just to say if it's inherited or no. You just know some properties are inherited and some no. And initial value. This is quite important for custom elements. Custom elements, it's essentially your components in the browser like you do in Angular, in React. So now you have this ability to provide types to CSS custom properties. And today we have a discussion in GitHub if you want to provide this in CSS, because CSS custom properties actually belong to CSS. So this is available. This might be available after a while. So, and why? You will ask, like, why? Come on, why it's important? Once I left my laptop with the previous demo. Do you remember this demo which I showed you where it was auto-changer colors for all the application? And actually, I went to eat something or anything. In half an hour, I came back and I realized that my actually laptop was discharged. So I did these 6 lines for this particular property, and you see the difference. Previously, I did Chrome demo. You see in Chrome, like memory usage it was decreased using these 6 lines from 15, let's say from 15 to 9 megabytes. And you see CPU usage actually decreased twice at least. It's nice. After that, my laptop actually discharged in 1 hour. So I'm happy about this. And so it's very important for your performance, for your memory usage, for battery, for all this stuff, for your sites. And syntax. You will say, OK, now I have to learn syntax. First of all, you know all these things like colors, numbers. You see, I just put it in a small text, so you don't need to learn this. Actually, you always like color, image, percentage, or anything. And here are the tricks. Of course, you will have some actually combinations. Let's say you want to say its length or percentage, like you usually do for padding. Yeah, you just use or, like, and it appeared to be very important to say the browser, do you want to actually use calc there or no? If you don't want, browser will do even more optimizations, so your properties will be even more performant if you use these combinations, of course. So if you want to use calc, instead just use dash. And of course, you can say, I want only dedicated values, like my text edition will be like big or bigger. Everything else is actually not correct value. Length, something like what you do for margin, like 10 pixels, 10 pixels, 10 pixels. Some array of values, it's actually length. Length plus, you see, done. Here, I'm sorry, we already, how to close this, my bad. And we already rethinking all this once again. If previously it was not animated, as browser didn't know about the type. Currently we but reintroduced types in CSS. And now they should be animatable. Let's try. That's the main question. So if you know what is CSS animation, I already showed you this demo, so you already know that actually it can be animated. All the trick which I did previous time, here, you see, the 6 lines, currently it's 5, which says, I have a size CSS property, which actually percentage and initial value is 100%. After this, my CSS native animation starts work because I use size variable, CSS custom property, which I use for width. After that, I'm doing in CSS just animation, usual CSS native animation. Like in some particular keyframes, it's another values. Done. CSS animation. Done. Cool. What else we can do? If you know what is, who knows what is a web animation API? Okay. So currently, the same engine, the same actually animation engine in browser should be triggerable from JavaScript. So you have CSS, you have CSS animations. You want to have JavaScript animations. What you did in JavaScript, in jQuery, in other frameworks, just to animate from property A to property B, to make it bigger or something like this. Here is a demo, but in general, essentially, if I love Rabbit, so Rabbit move. Let's say I want to move Rabbit from translate X to translate X different value. What you do in CSS? Like this, 0 value, 100. In JavaScript, you do the same. It's native API. Currently, it's polyfilled. You can use today in your browsers. Like change transform from value A to value B. The same, you want to provide some options like how much time should it take, 1 second, and for example, where to stay, forwards, and of course, some easing, how it should be animatable. In CSS, you do this line. In JavaScript, you provide some options. It's quite similar to what you did in jQuery, correct? And let's take a look if we can use the same animation, trigger the same animation engine from JavaScript. So I want to move my Rabbit from position 0, 0, which is here, somewhere here. Let's take a look. Run animation. It was moved, but did you see any animation? I didn't. So it was applied, this flips at 50% was applied. After half a second, Rabbit just moved. So what we do, you see, I'm animating translate X and translate Y property. So all together, let's put, we need CSS register property and just provide like translate X is a length which actually initial value is 0. I'm sorry, I have to trigger code pen. So translate X and translate Y currently just have registered from JavaScript. And as only after that we start moving, applying this animation, Rabbit starts moving, which is good. Let's do the same for Mad Guy. We will move him here. Alias goes somewhere else. You can continue with this demo. The main idea, this 6 lines give you all the control on registering, not only just to say browser, here are my types, immediately all your ecosystem starts working. CSS, JavaScript, animation, everything is available immediately. So let's summarize. What we did in CSS, we introduced CSS Custom Properties. So now you know how to use them, and that you can use them now. You can separate the values. You can simply change some particular values without copy-pasting the code, and many other abilities. They cascade and blah, blah, blah. We introduced CSS property types in general, so now your browser knows everything about these custom properties and makes them animatable, very performant, and everything else. What we have in JavaScript so far? Typed object model API, something where we can read CSS properties and write CSS property using normal browser API, not something like concatenating strings or anything. Between CSS and JavaScript, there is CSS object model, yeah? And there is a browser. So what is in the middle? What's going on here? Browser rendering. So let's take a look into this browser rendering together. So what we have here, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. You just actually interact with these guys, and you write HTML, and browser starts parsing your HTML, JavaScript. It goes together to the document object model. CSS applied via style engine, and this is called CSS. Render path. Everything should be rendered in your browser. Yeah. Then it goes to layout. Layout means, okay, somehow my actually page looks in the browser. So let's put all this together, lay out all these things, and after that, all this layout, so how your page actually looks, starts being actually painted, yeah? Layer by layer by layer, your browser just paint all these things. After that, there is a compositor. Like, compositor, first of all, knows that you want to see only part of your screen, and in general, just start to do some transforms or anything else. Usually it's on your GPU. So all this is usually on CPU. This is part of on GPU, on your video card. So it's called pixel rendering pipeline, how your HTML, JavaScript, CSS become to be pixels on your browser. Like style change, everything else, triggers layout, paint, composite. So these three stages actually are called during browser rendering. And this all previously was internal browser engine. You had no control, no ability to work with this part, absolutely. So the main idea of CSS Houdini group to expose and give you this API somehow, give you ability to interact and work with them. So Alex Surma is one guy who actually works in Google on this part, and he says that if we want some code to be JavaScript code to be executed during these parts of CSS, can you imagine actually how often it can be triggered? So let's take a look. He says like it's probably non-unrealistic to assume that some of these code fragments will have to be run every single frame, which means every millisecond, every microsecond, maybe even more. So what we can do in this case? So we have this browser rendering, we have some piece of JavaScript we want to actually execute, and we don't want to block user UI, correct? Today, for such piece of code, we have web workers. So they call this worklets. And they have a separate UI thread, so your JavaScript code will not block UI. They don't interact with DOM directly, which is actually expected. And limited API, I called limited because it's not limited, because you actually have explicitly say, I want to interact with this property, with that property, or something. So it's not limited. It just you have to be very careful because it will be executed very often. And today we have actually ECMAScript 6 plus 7, blah, blah, blah. We have classes. So essentially, it will be ECMAScript classes with called name methods, with named methods. You will see the code which is actually close to what you use in which you use in your code bases with Babel and blah, blah. So your code will be triggered when needed and possible. Let's take a look into the life cycle. Life cycle is like you in registering your module in JavaScript, the same what you do with web workers, yeah? And actually your it's actually essentially ECMAScript module will be executed, which is ECMAScript class, and every time that something applied like this rendering path like paint, layout, or actually composite, it will be executed and return some updates to the browser. And actually, when you close the page, it will die immediately. So the first one, paint worklet, what it is. The effect you can easily achieve using paint worklet. So the paint stage of your CSS is responsible for painting background, content, and highlight of the box, which means like Custom image can be painted on every browser paint action. You just change something, you just change the content of your box or anything, paint, paint, paint. Every time browser actually does the paint. So what we can do here, you can do any just background image, you can provide some border image, list style image. You can do this from your JavaScript immediately, something like this. Let's take a look into the code. So let's say I want to generate for the, so I want for my box to add a top border, like this, magenta. I'm saying like border top width, it's my custom property, is 10, which or after that will be used as your bridge, as I said, as your transport. So now from CSS, you're saying how big you want to be this border top width. It's your custom property. So now actually all your dreams came true, which means like now you can custom properties become really custom. You say in browser how to work with your property. And I'm saying border image will be actually a paint. Paint is a directive which will call our paint worklet. I'm registering this property saying it's a number. So we already learned this API, how it works, and why we need this, just to make this bridge work. And after that, I'm adding actually my worklet in JavaScript, like read border colors.js, which actually is here. Here we have ECMAScript class, which is border, with one static method, which actually reads, I want to get border top width. You see, border top width came from here till here and there. So CSS, register, JavaScript, and paint. This code will be executed every time in your browser. Like when you do some changes or anything. Like you have canvas here, actually size or geometry of the element and style map. All of these styles which actually we use. So here I use like, okay, give me the width of my element and give me the border top width. That's it. After that, I'm doing canvas. If you know what is canvas in JavaScript, you just simply draw a rectangle and fill it with magenta. Done. So what can I achieve doing this? So if you ever did any CSS polyfills, you know why it's so painful. So currently, multiple border color is actually available as a specification, but non-browsers are implemented this. What I want to do? I want to implement this, and you would not believe, but actually with using Paint API, you do this. You see, here it was triggered so far 6 times, my Paint API. This code kind of simple, similar code to what we saw in previous example. I want border top widths be bigger, even bigger. Immediately, you see, every time browser execute your code, and immediately it does it. I don't want red, I want, I don't know, gray. Immediately. I don't want border top, immediately. Okay. I won't go even further. I want to provide many blocks like this. What we see, immediately change it, immediately here. So you can do real CSS polyfills now. Not something like set interval, not some another magic, not mutation observers, but real code. You can apply other elements like border. Usually it's border, usually it's some background or anything. And browsers are smart. Here is the demo. In Chrome, you can simply say, show me with this green highlight every time when you do paint. So every time on this, in this stage, you see, it is called our code. So it's just another property. And browsers are very smart. They do repaint only when it's really, really needed. You see, here only this particular part of the application was painted. For example, left side. You see? Let's take a look. So when you change the size of the right guy, it will be changed only this part and everything related here. But this part is not touched, so no changes here. If you do something for this left part, everything is changed. So they trigger your code when needed and when it's actually available. Layout worklet. If somebody heard or know what is CSS Grid layout, we waited, even Flexbox, we waited for them for 3 years. Can you imagine? Tomorrow we just invent some another layout, and actually we want to make it work in the browser. Using CSS Houdini achievements, you can make it work today with JavaScript. So just you can provide your constraints, say how your layout will be just working, like Flexbox or Grid, and it will immediately work. After that, in your CSS, you will say like display layout centering, like I don't know, vertical, horizontal center, whatever I want. So one day we'll have this ability, like to use some generator with your constraints in JavaScript and do some layout like masonry. Today, to do such a layout, you actually use some JavaScript libraries or the code. And yeah, it's very unperformant, but we love it. And it was about layout, and the last one is composite. Composite stage, as I said, it's mostly on your GPU. So layout and paint usually on your processor, and previously it was called composition worklet. Currently it's animation worklet. The code is in sync with compositor thread. So when it comes from layout, paint, composite, actually your code will be executed. So use cases. Usually it's for some particular work with scrolls, like animation with scroll effects like sticky elements, smooth scroll animations, or scroll up bar, which you usually see in Chrome on mobile. So what is not noticeable here, in actually stable Chrome, if you know what is sticky header, sticky position, sticky, is implemented using this API. So which means it shows how performant it is, how stable, and actually it means that it can be used now, because even polyfill is available. So this guy you can start using. Compositor only properties. So if you know two properties like opacity and transform, it's the properties which don't trigger all the stages in the rendering. So if you change opacity or transform, all the stuff will be done on your GPU. So no layout, no paint, only composite. So usually you can also add will change, and browser immediately will say, I will go and provide a new layer on the GPU, which will just make this work even faster. So yeah, created by the compositor thread and available as a polyfill. So let's take a look into the demo. The demo is the usual one, you know, when we still have build mirror. When I scroll down, I see the scroll indicator. You see here. Here it is. Oh, sorry. Oh, hopefully. So, bad idea. Sorry, guys. Hopefully it will stop. Sorry, I have to kill this application. Otherwise, we will stuck here forever. Apologies. It is called mouse pose, and I didn't know that actually it will be so slow. Sorry for this. So actually this scroll position is quite usual effect in any UI which you do. And you can achieve this using animation worklet. I'm sorry. Will it stop? Okay, cool. Looks like it stopped. I'm sorry, apologies for this. So let's continue. This scroll position indicator is quite popular. Here, let's remove it. So how we can achieve this using composition worklet? You can do this simply. So you created this line, and you're just moving this to the left using just left minus 100%. So it will be just actually the same line, but hidden, yeah? And when you want to move it, you will just use transform to move it actually bigger, to make it bigger and bigger. You see what I'm doing? I'm just hiding this line and saying like, okay, there is a CSS trigger for my composition worklet, like which says just trigger scroll position worklet every time when some composition is happening for my block. And this is my reference for this particular block. After that, as we already said, in JavaScript, we add in a module, Worklet JavaScript. Let's go to this module. We're saying like, here's my worklet, which I already use it in CSS. In this worklet, as you see, it's a ECMAScript class. We're saying like, all the scroller element references, everything what was called like this in CSS, apply my particular code to this. And we don't want to read anything from there. We want to actually assign transform values there. And let's discuss this other properties there. So this animation worklet, how it looks, how it works. And it's, as I said, it's polyfilled. In these two methods, like timeline, I'm saying, I want to listen scroll, I want to listen vertical scroll, and which means like, okay, when you scroll the page, your scroll will be changed from 0 to 100%. After that, I'm just using this, you see, parse float, and multiply to 100, which means like it will give me from 0 to 100%. After that, I use our our API to send some data from CSS, from JavaScript to CSS, which is a typed object model. I'm saying like CSS translate, just generate. Actually, I'm generating this line in CSS. You see? Translate, transforms, translates 3, and just X just moves this line a bit further, which makes it work. You see, I'm scrolling down, and immediately just my X value is changed, which actually makes this demo work. So previously you had to use some library or anything. Now you have this particular worklet, which will do this for you for free, and it will be super performant, will be triggered only when it's needed. And you can go even further. What if I just don't want to listen all the scroll, but want to provide some options? There are many options there, but main idea is just like, I want to say like 375 pixels is my 100%, and it will give me ability to create some another demo. Here it is. So this is a demo, here is my Twitter feed, and this is particularly my custom part. Twitter is very good at providing headers, yeah? They always do some magic transitions there or anything. I just used one of their transitions. You see, I'm just scrolling down, and my actually avatar goes up, and this user information actually appears here. So it's done with this property. I'm saying like, when it goes here, let's just move here. Let's just animate on edges only, which makes, only I am here, it's changed. And let's take a look how it actually works, you see? And this is done using transform, and I will show you now separately to make sure that you know how CSS works. When I scroll down, it immediately moves. There is always a question like, how did I achieve such an effect? Very easily, because we have CSS. In CSS, you see when I'm doing this, only one class is changed. And how it works is actually here, world. You see, I'm changing only one transform. Only one CSS property does all this magic. Transition actually adds this animation. So use CSS and use all the CSS animation worklet in your code to make any additional wonderful effects. So let's summarize all together. Today we learned a lot. So it's good time to start using CSS Custom Properties because it's available, can be polyfilled with other things, and yeah, just really it's time. You can register custom properties from JavaScript. We will make them performant, make browser work with this in a proper way, and actually you can do some progressive enhancement using this. Like when it's available, just do it. When it's not available, okay, no good things. Like you can start using this animation worklet because it's available via polyfill. Yeah, so it's polyfilled. And bright future, you can just enable experimental web platform feature in flag in Chrome and just start playing with Paint worklet. And of course, you can stay tuned with CSS Houdini group, specs like worklet layout, font metrics, and typed object model. And yeah, you can follow me actually on the Twitter to where you can always know what is the latest state, what is the new additions in the browsers, and everything like this. These slides are available online. You can play with the code. You can just enjoy this, and you always know where to find me. In Twitter, just ping, ask me everything you want. So thank you very much for your attention. Cheers. And now it's time for your questions because yeah, we discussed a lot of this. So yeah, please.